This is an introductory tutorial on the use of rigid body joints within the Blender game engine, and it shows some of the physics effects that Blender is capable of. And it's for beginning to intermediate users of Blender, and I'm using version 2.63a. So let's just take a look at what this scene is. It's a simple little Ferris wheel I set up. It's not completely accurate or anything of that nature, but it just serves to show you how to kind of get started. So let's just run it real quick and see what it does. So you see, it's simply these are each one of the carts on the wheel is hinged, and you see, I don't have the constraints set by any great imagination, but kind of gives you an idea, and then we can run it and you can see the effects of the physics. Said they're a little out of control on this one, but you know, it's motion and it's fun, and it kind of shows you the power of Blender anyway. And then also, of course, I like it when it can be wild and out of control like that too, so you know, it's just fun. But it'll give you an idea, and it'll show you how to, I'll kind of give you an idea how to model easily in here to save you some headaches along the way. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, so maybe I'll just leave this scene in here as a reference. I'll just kind of slide it to the side. In fact, if you hold down the shift key in the middle mouse wheel, you can just slide this thing across. If you hold down the control key in the middle mouse wheel, you can zoom in and out like this. That really helps, versus otherwise if I'm just using the mouse wheel, it steps like this, but the control gives me a lot more finer control. In fact, that seems to be the case on a lot of commands like that with that control or the shift key. Alright, so let's just take a look here. I'll move this over. We're just going to put a new one in the scene. In fact, what I'll do is I'm going to grab a light, shift D, and I'm just going to move him over like this. Alright, and then for the main wheels I have here, let's look up close real quick like this. It's really just part of a cylinder that I extruded or cut out, and then these are just support beams. They're just kind of placed in like that, and then each one of these little cars, let's see, is just a simple little kind of car that I kind of quickly molded out, give it a little beveled edge. I just molded that out of a cube. But then the important thing is when we actually set it up, we actually set up the joint, and when it moves it has to, if you notice, Ferris wheels generally are set up like that. They have two rings, and then the car can go floating in between like that. So alright, so let's move this over and let's see what we can do. So I'll do shift A, and I'll get a cylinder, and it's located over here. I'll grab the green button, and what happened? Did I bring it over? Oh yeah, there he is. He's there. I'm going to bring the cursor back over to here with shift S. I'm going to bring the cursor to selected. So there he's set. This is important, so when you scale and move it around, it'll scale on that center like that. So I'm just going to hit S and I'll scale it up. Alright, and then I'll scale it up a little bit more like that. And then I'm going to rotate on Y. I know Y is the green axis, so I'll hit R, Y, and then type in 90 directly like this. Okay, and then I'm going to hit Alt Z, and I'm just going to work in solid mode instead of texture mode for the moment. Alright, and then I'll shrink it down, S, and followed by the X key, and then I'll escape that. I'll start with the mouse further out. That makes it easier to control the finer details. So there it is like that. So that's one of the wheels like that. And then the next thing I'll do is I'll hit tab, go into edit mode, come down here, make sure I have the face button selected. So then when I right click here, I've just selected that face. I'll hit X and I'll delete the face. I'll do the same here, X, delete that face on that one too. So there's my wheel. That's pretty much how I'd set it up. I won't set the whole thing up, but I'll kind of give you an idea. And you'll see it's fairly straightforward. Then you can work at it on your own. And then I'll tab out of it, shift D, and followed immediately by X, and then I'll move that to the side like that. So then I have these, they have two rings like this. Alright, and then let's go take a look at this guy again. Let's see, I'll shift, let's see, So then a cart. Let's make a little cart. We're just going to make a cart and a wheel. We're not going to worry about the stand or the support beams or things like that. That's just kind of detail stuff you can add in on your own. Alright, so then let's just put it doesn't really matter where we put it. Well, let's go into, let's hit number 3 for my key. And give that a side view like this. Alright, and I'll move my cursor over here. I'll make a little car, which is going to be very simple, believe me. I'll make it out of a cube. I'll show you some modeling tricks if you don't know them yet already, which you probably do. Let's see, I hit G and I'll just move it over here like this. And S. You see what happens if I don't have my cursor to the center? It scales out like this. Alright, so I'm going to Shift S, move him back to the center. Cursor to selected. Then when I hit S, he scales like this. Okay. I'm going to hit the, believe it or not, the delete key, DEL on the number pad will bring it right up to that cube where I want it, like this. Alright, then I'm going to tab, W, subdivide, and W, subdivide one more time like that. And then we're just kind of repeating commands that we've used. And just a lot of it's just to get in the habit of using the system. Turn everything off with the A key, hold the Alt key down, right click like that. Now I'm selecting faces. I wanted an edge in that case, so I need to come down here and select the edge select button. Now Alt, and I have that edge like that, and then I can move it around. I'm just gonna move him on G. I'll click G and then I'll just move it like that. I'll make a little bevel like that. Alright, and then there's a new feature. If I can ever remember it, let me see what it is. It's in 2.6. What is that thing? I can never remember how to get to it. Let me see if I can find it real quick. Oh yeah, here it is. Inset. Alright, Control F. I cannot remember this. Let me see. So let me see, I gotta select the faces first before I do it, but it's Control F what I was looking for. So I'm gonna select these guys, hold the Shift key and select these guys like this. Alright, and then Control F brings up the menu, and then the inset button. This is pretty cool. Inset faces like that. And then over here, if I bring up T for the toolbar, this down here at the bottom, I can select the thickness of this guy. That's just pretty slick, huh? And the depth, like that. So these are just tools to work with. I'm not going to do anything in particular with them. I'm just goofing around with them, give you an idea. Alright, and then I'll just leave that, and then I'll also, just because I'm going to select all these guys, I'm just going to delete those faces. And then here I have those on the inside there. Since they're all there here, I'll hit the B key, and I'll just grab all those guys. I'll delete those faces too. There we go. So here we have our little cart like this. Alright, I should have made that inset a little bit narrower so we had a bigger hole, but it'll serve. We're just kind of showing you how to use the rigid body joints, so that's the point here. So let's look here. He looks like he's going to be a little bit too thick, so I'll tab out of that. I'll hit 7 to look at him from up above. I'll hit 5 to go in ortho mode. It'll tell you you're there, so that really tells you if you're lined up. I'll set it up here. He's a little bit too thick because when he swings, he's got to swing between these bars like that. So S scale on X. Whoops, I'll bring him down, but I want him in the center. Well, I'll show you how to center him here in a second. So I'm just going to bring the Shift S, the cursor back to selected. Then I'm going to scale him on X like that. So I made him a little skinny guy like this. Okay, then I'm going to hit 5 back into perspective mode. And then zoom up here like this. And he's still a little bit too big overall for me, so I'm just going to scale him down. Like that. So now let's get to the real deal. I'm going to move him up here. He's in the center, approximately in the center like this. Let me see. Looks like I have an artifact on one of those faces up there, but that won't matter. And I'll move him down just a little bit. So now we need to go into the let me expand this a little bit so you can see here. Alright, I'm going to go into the, I'm already in the game engine in this case, so we need to be in the game engine. Normally your default in Blender render. So we're in the game engine. I'm going to add a constraint to this guy, and I'm going to add a rigid body joint. Alright, and then the important thing is to click this display pivot, so then you can see him up like that. I'll zoom in, and there's your pivot. In fact, if I zoomed around, if I turn around a little bit, you can see it's got X, Y, and Z in this case. And I want to move the location of this joint to be up at the top where it's going to swing. In fact, it's going to swing up above that. I'm not even going to put that whole piece in there, but you'll get an idea. And you can't just grab it and move it. You have to use it through here. So on the Z key, I'm going to change it and move it, say, you know, right up to there. And we're going to assume there's going to be a bar that goes between, kind of like I did over here. I didn't really put a full bar. I just kind of did it to, you know, fake it for the moment, because we was just goofing around with it. I'm using this in a future animation, a more advanced version of the Ferris wheel. Yeah, you'll have to look forward to that. I'm sure it will be quite exciting. And so now that we have our pivot, a rigid body joint, I should say, and the location is set up here, well, let's try and run the animation and see if anything happens. Let's hit P. And I'll escape that. That happens if you're in solid mode, so I'm going to go Alt-Z and go into texture mode. You need to make sure you have some lights set up like that. And then I'll hit P, and what happens? Well, nothing. There's no lights over here, so let's give it a light. Let's move these. Where's that light I had? Here's no, there's a... Oh, I'm going to put a light. I'm just going to put a light. Shift A, I'll just put a little point light right here. See where it is. Go get the light. Crank it up. Let's see. Don't look from above. He looks like he's pretty close by. Where's my light? Where's my light? How come I don't see him? Where's my light in the scene? Oh, well, it's because we don't have it. Let's move him up a little bit. We'll put him up at top and move him over just a bit. Like this. And I have no lights. Then why do I not have any lights in the scene there? Surely the light is bright enough. Something else to go. We'll turn into a sunlight. Turn into a spotlight. And we'll put in a little area light maybe. Maybe that'll show up. Let me see. He's not showing up. I don't see any real change in the light here. Okay. So something I am doing. There's that. Let's see. Let's go into solid mode. He's there. Okay. Well, anyway. All right. We'll work in wireframe for the moment, and I'm going to solve that here in a bit. I'm not sure what I'm doing there real quick. All right. So our pivot is sitting there, and when we hit P, nothing really happens. Though if we look over at the other Ferris wheel and we hit P, you can see things are moving. Now, one of the things that you have to do is to get it started, it could just be hung there in equilibrium. So we need to let's just rotate it up and out of the way of this joint for a second. So I want to position my cursor up here where that joint is located. So I'm going to go back into put my cursor right there at that corner if I can. Sometimes if there's something else in the way, it's hard to get to it. Oops, don't want to do that. And then let me look to the side and click him right there. Alright, so he's approximately right there. And the reason I did that is I want to rotate around that center when I rotate it. So now when I click this guy and I rotate, let me just rotate him. Oh, and he's going to be, I don't see X, so he's going to be on the X axis. So I'm going to just rotate on X like this here. Okay, now let me run the simulation with P. And what happens? Nothing. Okay, so that is because I must have forgotten something. Let me see. We have the Rigid body joint. Oh no, he should still, well, first thing, we don't want a ball joint, we want a hinge joint. That still shouldn't make any difference. It should still move. Let's see, I hit P again and no movement. Let's go back into O. Let's make sure he's a rigid body. Okay, now let's hit P and there he goes. Alright, so he's got to be, first of all, you have to not be static in the physics button. So it's got to be a rigid body in here, and then you have to go over into the constraint and set the rigid body joint like that. Alright, so that kind of gives you the basic idea of how to do it. If I move the pivot down here, it would pivot right around there. So this is just an issue of the X, Y, and Z location of where to move the pivot to, and then your object will pivot around it. Easy enough. Alright, so moving like that. So that's one thing you have to set up. And the other really important thing is getting it to move as the wheel turns. So just so we have a reference frame for the moment, I'm going to I'll click this guy, I'll go into edit mode, I'll click that frame, I'll extrude him just for a second. And the same with this one here. And extrude him. That way, if I set up a controller to rotate it, we can see it rotating, because it's hard to see a circle rotating otherwise. Alright, in fact, that's one of the things I'll do. In fact, I'll do just that right now. I'll set up a logic controller. So I'll just set it up on this one first. It's called cylinder.004. I'll go over into the logic editor. I can wheel mouse button can zoom it in and out, or hold it down and move it like this. I'll add a sensor. I'm going to add a keyboard sensor, and in this case I'll click here, press R, and R will be our sensor. So R is set for the keyboard sensor. Then I'll add a controller and a controller. I'll do tutorials on this in the future if you don't know this. And then I'll add a motion actuator, and I'll connect these guys together as well. And then I'm going to rotate those on the x-axis by, say, 1 degree, like that. So I'll go back to the 3D view. So when I hit P and I hit the R button, then you can see, well, it's rotating on the wrong axis. And that is because, well, even though X is pointing that way, I said rotate on X. But it's rotating, but already this cylinder was rotated before, so which I rotated it 90 degrees in one direction. Let's just try it. I should have cleared the rotation and done that otherwise, but it's easy enough. We'll just use, it's going to be either Y or Z. Now let's try it again. P and then the R key. So nope, it's not that one. And then the logic editor, we'll put it on Z as 1 degree. And then R. Alright, so there we go. There it's rotating around like that. But you see the rigid body joint action is working for the physics, but it's not connected to that. So now what you don't want to do, you might think, oh, okay, I can just parent that to this here. Well, we'll do just that. I'll click that first, shift, click that, hit Control P to parent like you normally do, and set it to the object. Now let's try with run the simulation and hit R, and let me zoom out and we'll run it again, hit R, and well, it's not working because it's not correct. So I'm going to hit Alt P and that'll clear the parent to there. So what I need to do is just within here, my name is cylinder.04, that's your target. So you go get this guy down here, cylinder.04. Where is he? He's further down somewhere. Oh, I have all these cubes. Oh, no, I could type it in here, CY. That'll search for it, cylinder.04, like that. Okay, now let's run it. And then R. And there he goes. So let's zoom out. Give you an idea. There's that. And then R rotates him around. Alright, well, so that's really what you need to do for getting this set up, and I'll let you take care of the rest of the work as far as making, whatever you want to do, but that's the basics of setting up the rigid body joint, and it's a pretty powerful, lot of features within the within the buttons to set up here as far, let me see, where's this guy here, that you can mess with in here to make it work whatever way you want to work. One of the most important things though is this radius button here. Is if I adjust this, this affects the constraint of where it's going to hit. So now let me just set that like that, and I'll run this here for a second. You can see it doesn't like that. Let me make it smaller. Let's see, P. So what it was doing, it's running into the Ferris wheel edge itself because I've changed the radius for it like that. Okay, well, I think that's about it for this lesson. That was just kind of give you an idea. I think you can set it up on your own then at this point in time. I'll just go back into here one more time so you can actually see it in motion. And there it is. Oops, where'd my little car go? Did I mess one up? Oh yeah, I must have goofed that up somewhere. I'm not sure. All right, well that's it. I'll see you in the next lesson.